Okay, well, I was born in 1931, August the 9th, and
On Bridge Street?
in Bridge Street, Westport. But if I could revert to the late the late 40s, say 40s, 47, 48, I have the first time I played rugby in Westport was in O'Malley's Field. I have the memory there that while soccer was the big game in town at the time, the rugby club reinvented itself. Paddy Hoban, Jeff O'Malley, John Jeffers, McCormick, Pierce Gills, and his brothers Frank and Noel were there. But the story that stands out in my mind is I was young and brash, I suppose, and Joe McCormick was playing for the opposition, and the ball was he was on the ground and the ball was near his head, and I kicked the ball away from him. And when he got up the ground, he got a hold of me and he says, "I'd advise you not to do that again ever in your lifetime."
So you played first beside English's shop up in
Angeles Park.
Angeles Park, yeah.
Angeles Park, yeah. Well,
had you a club actually? Was there an actual club form or was it a loose arrangement?
no, there was no. It was just, as far as my memory serves me, the Westport Rugby Club played a match in Tullamore. There was a connection to Tullamore through the Gill family, and Tullamore came to Westport, and we went to Tullamore. Those were the only games, the standout games that I remember from that period. And then in the early 50s, the rugby club become more established, and on account of having a good number, maybe seven or eight of the team were fellas who learned rugby in school away from Westport. And signs by the mid-50s was a golden era in Westport Rugby. Two Connacht League wins and one cup win.
And who were on them teams that time?
What did we win? We won. We certainly won two Connacht leagues in succession in the mid-50s, and we got one Connacht Cup in 1955, and we were beaten in the final of two other cup campaigns, all in the 50s. So you can say this was the golden era of
Rugby.
Westport Rugby, yeah. So
who was on the team that time?
who was on the team? Well, I'll call it out to you now to the best of my ability. Tommy Hanley from Altamount Street, my brother Liam from Bridge Street, Eamon Valkenburg, he was from Ball, Tony O'Grady from Bridge Street, Paddy Hoban from Westport, Peter Ryan, myself, Noel Gill, Miles Stanton, Bob Kilkelly, Pierce Gill, Charlie Garvin, and two other members whose name I forget. training was voluntary.
How many times a week?
We would, some people would not train at all. More people, the only training I remember from that era, because we didn't have our own pitch or property to play football on, we had to use the roadway. Tony O'Grady, myself, Clem Collins, one of the men I forgot to mention, and my brother Liam, we would run out the Ballinrobe Road about 2 or 3 miles, maybe once or maybe twice a week. So the training was very difficult in those days. However, on Wednesday, which was the half day, all the shops were all closed on a Wednesday. If the weather was suitable, we would go down to the paddock, which is the only place that was available to us.
So nothing of the intensity of today's training?
Oh, it wouldn't, no. No comparison.
Okay. What other pitches did you play on besides Angela's Park?
I played here in Westport.
Yeah.
Here in Westport, I played in Munster's Field, O'Malley's Field.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah.
The point of the key.
Yep.
And then we got permission to use part of Lord Sligo's estate, just inside.
Beside the farmyard, is it?
Yes.
I played on that, yeah.
You played there?
I played there, yeah.
Yeah.
And we had the other one there up the road.
Yeah.
There was one up the top of the road there as well, with a big slope on it. Remember that one?
Oh, that's the one I'm talking about.
That's the one, yeah. And then there was one inside that again.
Yeah.
For a while.
Where we were on both sides of the road.
That's right, yeah.
Down there. I remember, what's it called? Brenda McBride, the Lord and I seen him, who worked at the station. He was playing for Westport on the wing, and he tackled this fella, and he was knocked unconscious. I don't know. That's as much as I can remember from it.
On that pitch?
On that pitch.
Down to the main, yeah.
Yeah,
down to the main.
One of the main pitches.
Did you ever get knocked out yourself? No?
No.
You were too cute.
Huh?
You were too cute.
Yeah, well, I got out of the way quick enough.
So you were involved in the purchase of Caraholly and all that?
Yes.
And the development of that, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
That was a big move. That was a great move, actually.
That was the best move that the rugby club did in Westport.
Yeah. That was funded mostly by the Castle Court Disco. That was funded by the Friday Night Fever and the Castle Court Disco.
Oh boy, I remember that quite clearly. I remember coming home to my wife at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, you were on duty as a bouncer, weren't you?
Well, I was never had the physique to be a bouncer, but
you stood at the door anyway for a long time.
I still was able to mind myself.
You'd say that.
And it was necessary in those days because fellas coming in at 10, 11, 12, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, all coming in. Very, very, very tough times down there, trying to keep them quiet.
Well, there was never much trouble down there, was there?
Oh, there was never much trouble, but on occasion, there were, yes.
1 or 2 skirmishes.
I travelled quite a bit to play rugby. I played rugby in the Caribbean. I played rugby in Australia. I played rugby in New Zealand, in Scotland, and the Isle of Man, the Channel Islands,
England.
England.
I understand that you got involved in the finances of the Connacht branch in your term.
Yes, I did. The finances were in a very poor condition. I'm not so sure that that the fact that they didn't have money was holding them back or anything like that, because in those days things were achieved without money, all because money wasn't as plentiful as we would like to have it.
Okay. Is there much change in rugby now from when you started?
Oh, when I started in the 1950s, late 40s and 50s, it was a game that few people in Ireland had an interest in. It's only in recent years, in more recent years, that the big headlines in the newspapers and on the television have hoisted the game to great heights.
Is it a better game now than it was then?
Well, there are two games of rugby being played now: professional and
Amateur.
And amateur. I would not play professional rugby for all the tea in China.
Why not?
The hits are too strong and too dangerous.
Is it a more attractive game now?
Oh, of course it is. It has been made attractive by the television and by the radio and by the newspapers.
It's a very fast game now, isn't it?
It is indeed. They want to be on top of the heap now to represent your club.
You'd want to be doing more than 2 miles out the Ballinrobe Road to keep up with it nowadays.
Well, yes, that is.
Who were the great characters in the rugby around Westport in your time?
Paddy Hoban, Pierce Gill,
David McKeown.
The Lord have mercy on him, yes, Brendan.
You used to have an annual dress dance or rugby dinner dance, a big event of the year one time.
Yeah, oh yes, it was.
When did that start about?
It was in the 1950s.
The 50s.
It was always held out in Belclare House, which doesn't exist today.
Was it a nice venue?
Was it a nice venue? It was a beautiful venue.
Who owned it?
The Burke family owned it, I think. And then John Healy bought it.
He done a great job on that for a while.
He did.
While it lasted, yeah.
He did, yeah. I can remember a person from Westport. I was on the door, and my attention was taken by people who came in the back door, and they had plenty of drink on them, and there was a bit of a schmozzle to keep them out.
Go on, what happened with the schmozzle anyway?
I won't name the person because it's still alive, who caused all this problem. But of course, we recognise the fact that himself and his uncle, the two of them, there was quite an odour from their breath.